Hello, my name is Jonathan Aguilar, and I'm a water resource engineer. And welcome to our cotton field virtual tour. Yes, you've heard it right. It's cotton. So we've tried it last year, and we are going to share with you some of the lessons that we've learned so far. With me that I was able to also record was Randy, and he will talk about some of the weed issues. And I would like to acknowledge some people that have been part of this project, like Stu, Lucas, Alexi, Bill, and Sarah, and also some of our contributor that made this project successful. So my my purpose today is to be able to share with you some of the thoughts that we had, experiences that we had for the past year, and also bring you over to our cotton field so that you could at least see, even virtually, some of the things that are going on in our field. So I think one of the first questions that we usually have is what is the cotton research and why are we doing it? So first of all, we know that there is some water resource issues that we have to deal with, and so that's the reason why we are going to look at cotton, which is one of the considered drought-tolerant crops in the region. We've seen that there has been a big acreage growth in the region. 2015, there was only 16,000 acres, and by 2019, it has more than doubled. It's tenfold in terms of its acreage. The availability of varieties, particularly with regards to herbicide tolerance and shorter season requirement, has been another reason why we are looking at this cotton in our region. And it's no wonder also that the Kansas Water Vision also states that cotton is an important resource that we should be looking at. And we've had several calls from USDA RMA wherein they are looking for cotton data, particularly that some of the counties are starting to plant them. That was about 2018 and 2017. So we said that KSRE is really poised to do this, and so we've talked to other people, and here we are doing some cotton research in Garden City. So we started with the basic questions. Will cotton grow or not in Garden City area? And if it grows, will it have a decent yield? And at the same time, if it does going to have decent yield, when should we start planting cotton? So those are some of the basic questions that we throw to ourselves when we started this research. So in 2019, we planted two plots. We Phytogen 210 seeds. One is on May 15th. We call it the early plot. And May 30th, about 15 days later, our late plot. So during the early plot, we know that our soil temperature was just right. However, right after we planted, the temperature dipped down to unfavorable temperature, colder temperature. And so we only had about 10% germination, and so we had to abandon it. Late plant, the later planted plant, we get about 43% germination because we know that at the time that we planted it, the soil temperature was just iffy, right around that borderline. But right after we planted it, the temperature went up, and so there were some heat units that were achieved. So we get about 43% germination for that late plant. And so the rest of the data that we are going to talk about are regarding the late plant that we had. The seeding rate was around 55,000 seeds per acre. We've got irrigation treatments, about 6 of them, from dryland to full, and at the same time, some strategic planting, which we refer to as, which I will describe later on. So the early plant was planted on corn stubble, and the late plant was planted to sorghum stubble. So I will not be talking a lot about the agronomics of the cotton. If you would like to know more about it, Stu Duncan has presented this during the Governor's Water Conference in 2019, and I have the link here that you could follow and download it. But I just want to point out here that personally, I'm still learning about the crop stages of cotton, and it has something to do with the timing, with the days after, also with the days after it was planted, at the same time before and after bloom as well. So, uh, looking at more at the water use, we know that it has also a very similar curve with corn or sorghum, wherein it picks up during the time that it's bloom and then tries to fall down as during the time that it is maturing. So we know that there are some strategic timing here that we should be looking at. In particular, we are following the research that Lucas Hag and student did in Moscow for about 5 to 6 years, wherein they were looking at the possibility of putting an inch or two to one of the critical stages. And one of those that they were able to identify is match head square, an inch during the match head square. And there is a significant difference with it compared with the uh, dryland treatments. And on average, there was about 250 bushels per acre of advantage compared with the dryland. They have also looked at putting in another inch during bloom, but it actually, in some years, it has depressed the yield on that cotton. So we know that there is some advantage on strategic application of that water. So right now we are going to bring you over to the field and at the same time talk with our weed scientist regarding weed pressure.
We are about a mile or two away from US Highway 50, and that used to be the farthest north of where we could grow cotton. And last year we started to plant cotton here just to know if it is going to be successful or not. And so far, what we have found is that we could successfully grow cotton here in our area. As you could see here, we've got cottons again this year, and this was planted sometime in May 15th, and it was just the right time, the right temperature, the right moisture, and it is growing very well in this area. We have several questions that you would like to ask here in our fields. Last year, the main question that we have is that, is it going to grow? So we planted one on May 15th and the other on May 30th. Unfortunately, last year, May 15th wasn't the best time to plant cotton in this region. We had only about 10% germination and we have to abandon the field. Fortunately, we have a second planting date, which is June 30th, and that field had a germination rate of about 43%. And so we continued and have some yield at the end of the year. I am standing here right now in between two plots. One is what we call a variety plots, wherein part of it has been planted with different varieties, but one of them is still the same variety that we have planted throughout all of our field, the Phytogen 210. This was planted around May 15th when the temperature and the weather was just right. About 10 days after, we came back and planted this strip of field or this plot. This is what we call a differential irrigation plots. We are going to implement different irrigation treatment here, from dryland to full irrigation. But what you could see here also is the differences in terms of its growth and germination just based on the planting dates. Again, as I mentioned, this one has been planted as early as possible, which is around May 15th for this region, and this one was planted about 10 days after with the same almost condition. And you could see that one, we have a difficulty of germinating them during that time, and the other thing is that we have a relatively low stand on this side of the field. So one thing that we have learned in this region is that timing, particularly the planting timing, is really very critical. You would like to have it as early as possible at the right optimal condition so that you could get the most out of the growth of cotton. So one of the main lessons that we have learned when planting with cotton is that germination is really very critical, and so we should be looking at all of the weather parameters, the soil temperature, the moisture, the herbicide, and all of those things should be should be important in order for us to have a successful stand of cotton. The other thing that we would like to mention is that the seeding rate is also critical. What we have found out that the typical recommendation for seeding rate is about 55,000 seeds per acre. Last year we think that may be on the lower side as you go farther north, particularly in this region. So this year we have tried two seeding rates. One is 55,000 and one is 65,000. Just trying to figure out what is the sweet spot for that nice germination of the corn. So basically we have two treatments. One is based on the seeding rate, the other is based on the planting date. So we are trying to figure out for you the best time of the year to be able to plant, at the same time what is the best seeding rate. This cotton field is located in Finnop, about 2 miles away from the Garden City proper, and it is an irrigation research field by the K-State Southwest Research and Extension. Here in this field, we are in what we call a center pivot, where we are able to apply different amounts of water with 4 different types of modes of application. But on this particular field, we are focusing a little bit more on cotton with 2 major treatments here. One is that we have different population rate. We have rates of 65,000 per acre and 55,000 per acre. As we know that as we go further north, the temperature and the weather is going to be very critical for the cotton crop. And so we are trying to figure out if 55,000 or 65,000 or some other population rate is the most optimum population for this region. On top of that, we also have 4 different modes of application of water. We've got a mobile drip irrigation that is emitting 1 gallon per hour, a mobile drip irrigation emitting 2 gallons per hour, a bubbler, and also a Lisa, what we call a Lisa, or a spray mode. So we have those taken care of in this region. We are hoping that this different application would not have a drastic differences in terms of its effect on cotton, but who knows? We are trying to research it for you so that you will know also the best way to be able to grow cotton with the different nozzle packages that you might be using at. We hope to be able to share by the end of the year some of the results that we have learned from this field. Thank you very much, and we hope that we have imparted something for you this year.
I think that I had a really good old farmer when I first got out of college. He said he likes that pre-emergency herbicide. So pre-emergence herbicide followed by a post-emergence herbicide has always been a good plan. And we put Valor and dicamba on ahead of planting cotton last year, and then put Dual down as a prior to planting cotton, and that wasn't quite enough. Our weed control really, and then of course we used the 2,4-D and Roundup over the top with the resistant seed, and that was good. The control was good, but it wasn't quite enough. So this year we brought more to the picnic. So we got a really old herbicide. I think that herbicide is from the 70s, Cotaran. It's an old pre-emergence herbicide, and we added that to the Valor and the dicamba prior to planting the cotton. And then after planting cotton, we added much more Cotaran. I'd never used Cotaran before, and I had no idea how high a rate you could use, but we used the highest maximum rate split in 2 shots. And the weed control on that was outstanding. There are spots in the field where some varmint ate the cotton, so there's dead spots in the cotton, and there's no weeds in the dead spots. So if you see bare ground and it didn't have weeds in it, that's the gold standard for weed control. We didn't quite know where we were going to plant what, and we planted wheat, and we had a very thin wheat cover crop that went in that we planted the cotton into, and I think that made a tremendous difference. I've been doing research over the last couple of decades with wheat as a cover crop prior to planting all kinds of row crops, and I have, gosh, 6 years of data showing that wheat alone gives us excellent control of kochia, and that is kochia is what's driving the model out here for resistance. We have kochia that's resistant to star rain, atrazine, all of the ALS herbicides, Roundup, and I have some that seems to be tolerant dicamba as well. So we have to bring another tool to the picnic, and I think that a wheat cover crop part of planting is a good thing. Cotton is really drought tolerant, so we have shown that a wheat cover crop applied prior to planting corn increases yield even at the deficit of the water that the wheat cover crop uses. So it's kind of odd for me to think that I can throw water away and make water, but the advantage of a wheat cover crop in corn is increased water use efficiency at tassel. So the water we use, we use more efficiently in corn. Now in cotton, which is a much more water efficient crop, it would seem to me that the deficit of growing the wheat cover crop would be even less. So I think that wheat cover crop prior to planting cotton looks like a no-brainer to me. There's a lot of research out there with dozens of different mixtures of peas and canola and all kinds of things out there, and with $15 price tags. I have yet to see any information that shows me that wheat is not just as good as all the fancy expensive cover crops. So you got the wheat, it ain't selling for very much. It's if you can clean up your own wheat and plant it for cover crop, looks like a no-brainer to me. You know, I'm a weed guy. It looks to me like there's agronomic questions in cotton that I'm uncomfortable with. It looks to me like elevation is as important as latitude. You know, Garden City is a little higher elevation. You know, there's places that are growing cotton in Kansas that are further north, but if you look at them, they're 1,000 feet lower in altitude. And everybody's ever been to field day, can't have field day tell them what's the best weed control? Dark. So getting that cotton to pop up out of the ground and getting a canopy is the best possible thing for weed control and the best possible thing for cotton. Last year we didn't push the envelope on population. Did we do 40,000 last year?
55,000.
Last year?
Yes.
Yeah, and then more's better. And I don't know.
65. We tried
65 is great. You got if you could get 55 and you get every one of them to pop out of the ground 4 days after you planted it, 50 would be plenty. But you know, cotton is a little tricky to get it to come out of the ground. So the quicker you get that ground covered, the better off you are. Now I have no idea whether the cost of the cotton seed covers all that or not. I'm a weed guy. I'm not an economist. But it looks to me like if you get cotton's got weeds in it, you can't cut it. That don't pay the bill. You need to have a crop prior to planting cotton where you can get really good weed control. Cotton needs to be part of a rotation where you have excellent weed control for several years prior. So similar to people that grow sunflowers. People don't ever grow sunflowers 1 year after another because sunflowers are not as competitive a crop. Cotton, it can be a little hard, slow to come out of the ground. Sometimes it doesn't canopy as quick as other crops, so it takes a little baby to get the cotton to get weed control.
Welcome back. So what we're going back here is about the results that we had about in the 2019. I've already alluded some of them a while ago during the field visit in our cotton field, but I would go now with the numbers. So what we have found out last year is that we've got about 12 inches of rainfall during the time, and among all of the treatments, actually the fully irrigated had the lowest yield and possibly the lowest potential or potential gross among all of the treatments. It only got about 155 pounds per acre of length during the time. The dryland surprisingly has a better quality. At the same time, better yield. So about 237 pounds per acre, which could net you about $114 per acre when you consider all of the loan averages uh, for that particular quality. The limited irrigation at 33% ET actually had, or the evapotranspiration actually had the best yield and quality for the field. It has about 313 pounds per acre, and it could gross you almost close to 150,000. The next treatment that had a good uh, turnaround also is the 1 inch at match head square. Again, both in that limited 3% evapotranspiration and on match head square, we only put about an inch of application of water. So for the match head square, it yielded about 263 pounds per acre and has a potential gross of $119. So by no means this is not a big yield compared with the other area. For one, we only have about 40% of germination. At the same time, during this year, um, we are just starting to learn about this crop. Moving on, the so we've got some initial recommendations here that we could share with you. So first of all, what we have learned is that you have to prepare the field early on, because that condition for a favorable planting condition is going to come what in a blink. So you have to be ready when you are going to plant some cotton. Because we are also in an area wherein there might be some issues with emergence or germination due to the weather conditions, we would probably also recommend to lean towards a higher seeding rate. We've used 55,000, and as I mentioned a while ago, we have used this year to as much as 65,000 per acre, just to be able to see what is the sweet spot for seeding rate. We also recommend that you adopt an irrigation schedule, whether it is an ET-based, a soil-based, or a plant-based feedback, and follow through it. Have some confidence in using them, because we know that if you over irrigate, there is some penalty in terms of the yield as well as the quality of the cotton yield. Also, as you probably are aware, aim to keep your field weed-free. If you are new, particularly for this cotton, seek help. We've done that before. We've done that last year. We ask for help in terms of knowing when to spray, when to apply certain chemicals on the field. So have somebody that is knowledgeable to help you with in the first year at the least. So going back to our simple questions, or three questions that we had: will it grow in the Garden City area? Yes, we definitely yes. If it grows, will it have a decent yield? Look like yes. We know that it wasn't the best growing season for cotton last year, but we still had a decent yield. So we think that it is a yes. When should you plant cotton? As early as the conditions are favorable, because we are looking at uh, the growing degree days, or the heat units, and we are right there on the border that when you lose that opportunity, you might not have a good cotton yield. So with that, thank you very much for your attention, and again, be safe out there and be healthy. I wish you the best for the rest of the day. Thank you.